The bitter December wind cut through the mountains of northern Montana like a blade, carrying with it the scent of snow and something far more sinister, the sound of human desperation echoing from the abandoned warehouse at the edge of Timber Falls. My name is Jack Morrison. I'm 38 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years living alone in my cabin deep in the Glacier National Forest, working as a lumberjack and trying to forget a past that haunts me every single day. I never intended to be at that warehouse that night. I had come to town for supplies, flour, coffee, ammunition for hunting, the usual necessities that kept me alive through the harsh Montana winters. But as I loaded my truck outside Murphy's General Store, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. "The auction's tonight," whispered Tom Bradley, a man I recognized as one of the seedier characters who frequented the local bars. 3 kids, this time, real young ones, should fetch a good price. "Kids?" replied his companion, a thin man with nervous eyes. "What kind of auction sells kids?" "The kind that don't ask questions and don't leave witnesses," Bradley hissed. "These are orphans? No family? No one looking for them? Perfect merchandise?" I felt my hands clench into fists as the full horror of what I was hearing sank in. Human trafficking. Child trafficking. In my town? In my mountains? Happening right under everyone's noses, you see. I had a reason to care more than most people would. 20 years ago, I was one of those kids. My name wasn't always Jack Morrison. That's the identity I created when I aged out of the system. I was born Jimmy Torres, and I spent my childhood being passed from one abusive foster home to another, sold and traded like property by people who saw children as commodities rather than human beings. I had escaped that life through sheer luck and the kindness of one social worker, who helped me disappear into the wilderness when I turned 18. But the scars never healed, and the memories never faded. The idea that other children were going through what I had endured filled me with a rage I hadn't felt in years. I followed Bradley and his companion at a distance, my truck's headlights turned off as I navigated the familiar mountain roads by moonlight. They led me to an old logging warehouse that had been abandoned for decades, its broken windows and rusted metal siding making it look like a skeleton against the winter sky. I parked my truck a quarter-mile away and approached on foot, my boots crunching softly in the snow as I moved through the shadows. The warehouse was lit from within by harsh fluorescent lights, and I could hear voices, too many voices for this to be a small operation. Through a broken window, I saw a sight that made my stomach turn. In the center of the warehouse, 3 children stood on a makeshift platform, their hands bound behind their backs, their eyes wide with terror. They couldn't have been older than 10, 8, and 6 respectively, 2 boys and a girl, all thin and dirty, wearing clothes that were too small and too worn for the bitter cold. The oldest boy, with dark hair and defiant eyes, stood protectively in front of his younger siblings, trying to shield them from the crowd of men who surrounded the platform like vultures. The middle child, a girl with blonde hair that hung in matted tangles, clutched at her older brother's shirt with bound hands, tears streaming down her face. The youngest, a boy who couldn't have been more than 6, stood frozen in terror, his small body shaking uncontrollably. "Ladies and gentlemen," called out a man in an expensive suit who clearly wasn't from around these parts, "we have 3 prime specimens tonight. Brothers and sister, aged 10, 8, and 6. Healthy, strong, and completely untraceable. Bidding starts at $5,000 for the set." The crowd of Menand, they were all men, all with the kind of cold eyes that spoke of unspeakable appetites, began shouting out numbers. I watched in horror as the price climbed higher and higher, as these children were reduced to nothing more than merchandise to be bought and sold. "15,000, shouted one man. 20, called another. 25,000 for all 3. I had seen enough. My military training from my brief stint in the army before I disappeared into the woods kicked in, and I began to formulate a plan. There were at least 20 men in that warehouse, all of them armed, all of them dangerous. A direct assault would be suicide, and more importantly, it would likely get those children killed. But I had advantages they didn't know about. I knew these mountains better than anyone alive. I knew every trail, every cave, every hiding spot, within a 100-mile radius, and I had something they didn't expect: a man with nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for. I circled around to the back of the warehouse, where I found the electrical panel that powered the building. With my knife, I cut the main power lines, plunging the entire building into darkness. The shouts of confusion and anger that erupted from inside told me my plan was working. In the chaos that followed, I slipped through a broken window and moved through the darkness like a ghost. Years of living alone in the wilderness had honed my senses to an almost supernatural level. I could navigate by sound and touch, while the men inside stumbled around blindly, shouting orders and bumping into each other. I made my way to the platform, where the children were being held. In the darkness, I could hear their terrified whimpering, and it broke my heart. "Hey," I whispered to the oldest boy as I cut his bonds with my knife. "I'm here to help. My name is Jack. Can you tell me your names?" "I'm Danny," he whispered back, his voice shaking but determined. "This is my sister Emma and my little brother Sam. Are you really going to help us?" "I promise," I said, cutting Emma's bonds next. "But I need you to be very brave and very quiet. Can you do that? All three children nodded, and I could see the desperate hope in their eyes, even in the darkness. Stay close to me, I whispered, lifting little Sam into my arms. We're going to get out of here. The warehouse was still in chaos, with men shouting and flashlight beams cutting through the darkness randomly. I led the children along the wall, toward the window I had entered through, moving slowly and carefully to avoid making any noise. We were almost to the window when a flashlight beam swept across us. They're escaping, shouted one of the men. Gunshots erupted behind us as I pushed the children through the window and followed them out into the snow. Run, I shouted, pointing toward the tree line. Head for the trees and don't look back. More gunshots followed us as we ran through the snow, the children's legs pumping as fast as they could manage. I could hear the men pouring out of the warehouse behind us, their angry shouts echoing across the mountainside. But I had the advantage now. This was my territory, my home. I knew exactly where to go. This way. I called to the children, leading them into the dense forest where the trees would provide cover from our pursuers. The snow was deep, making it difficult for the children to run. But adrenaline and terror gave them strength they didn't know they had. We ran for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, following game trails and creek beds that I knew by heart. Behind us, I could hear the sounds of pursuit growing fainter as our pursuers lost our trail in the darkness and the maze of trees. Finally, when I was sure we had lost them, I led the children to a small cave I knew about, one of many hiding spots I had discovered during my years in the wilderness. It was barely large enough for the four of us, but it was dry and hidden, and most importantly, it was warm enough to keep us alive through the night. Are we safe? Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper as she huddled against her brothers. For now, I said, pulling emergency blankets from my pack and wrapping them around the children. But we need to keep moving tomorrow. Those men won't give up easily. Who were those people? Danny asked, his young voice filled with a maturity that no 10-year-old should have to possess. Bad people, I said simply. People who hurt children. But you don't have to worry about them anymore. I won't let them hurt you. Why are you helping us? Sam asked, his small voice muffled by the blanket I had wrapped around him. The question hit me harder than I expected. Why was I helping them? The simple answer was that it was the right thing to do. But the real answer was more complicated than that, because someone should have helped me when I was your age, I said finally. And because no child should have to go through what you've been through. What happened to you when you were our age? Emma asked with the direct curiosity that only children possess. I hesitated, unsure how much to tell them. But looking at their faces so young, so frightened, so desperate for someone to trust, they decided they deserved the truth. I was like you, I said. I didn't have parents. I was passed around from family to family, and some of those families, some of them weren't good people. They hurt me, and they sold me to other people who hurt me. I spent my whole childhood being treated like property instead of like a person. How did you get away? Danny asked. I got lucky, I said. When I turned 18, someone helped me disappear. I came to these mountains and built a new life for myself. I thought I had left all of that behind. But when I heard what was happening to you three tonight, you couldn't let it happen to us, Emma finished. No, I said. I couldn't. We spent the rest of the night in that cave, the children taking turns sleeping while I kept watch. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of pink and gold, I made a decision that would change all of our lives forever. Listen, I said to the children as they woke up. I have a cabin about 5 miles from here. It's hidden, safe, warm. You can stay there while we figure out what to do next. What about those men? Danny asked. Won't they keep looking for us? They will, I admitted. But they don't know these mountains like I do, and they don't know about my cabin. It's been my secret for 15 years. Will you stay with us? Sam asked, his small hand reaching out to grab mine. The question caught me off guard. I had lived alone for so long that the idea of sharing my space, my sanctuary, with anyone, even children who desperately needed help, felt overwhelming. But looking at these 3 kids, seeing the hope and trust in their eyes, I knew I couldn't abandon them. They had already been abandoned too many times. Yes, I said. I'll stay with you, for as long as you need me to. The hike to my cabin took most of the morning, with frequent stops to let the children rest and to make sure we weren't being followed. My cabin was built into the side of a mountain, surrounded by dense forest and accessible only by a trail that I had deliberately kept hidden and difficult to follow. When we finally arrived, the children stared in amazement at my home. It wasn't much a simple log structure with 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, and basic furniture that I had built myself, but after what they had been through, it must have seemed like a palace. This is where you live? Emma asked, her eyes wide with wonder. This is home, I said, opening the door and ushering them inside. And for now, it's your home too. The cabin was warm from the fire I had banked before leaving for town the day before. I quickly got it roaring again, and the children gathered around it, finally beginning to thaw out from our night in the cold. Are you hungry? I asked, and all 3 children nodded eagerly. I prepared a simple meal of beans, bacon, and cornbread, the kind of hearty food that would stick to their ribs and give them the strength they needed. As they ate, I studied their faces, trying to piece together their story. "How long were you with those people?" I asked gently. 3 weeks, Danny said between bites. "Maybe a month. It's hard to remember. What happened to your parents?" Danny's face darkened. "They died in a car accident 6 months ago. We were put in foster care. But the family?" He trailed off. Unable to finish, "They sold us," Emma said bluntly. "They told us we were going to a new family, but instead they gave us to those men." The casual way she said it, as if being sold was just another unfortunate thing that happened to children, made my heart ache. These kids had been through hell, and they were still so young, so innocent despite everything they had endured. "Well, you're safe now," I said, "and I promise you, no one is going to sell you or hurt you ever again." "How can you promise that?" Sam asked, his small voice filled with the kind of skepticism that no 6-year-old should possess. "Because," I said, "making a decision that would change my life forever. I'm going to make sure of it, whatever it takes." "Will Jack be able to keep the children safe from the traffickers, hunting them? What sacrifices will he have to make to protect his new family? How will 3 orphan children transform the life of a man who thought he was beyond redemption?" Don't miss the next chapter to discover how love and sacrifice can triumph over the darkest evil. 3 months had passed since that terrifying night at the warehouse, and my cabin had transformed from a solitary refuge into something I never thought I'd experience again, a home filled with the sounds of family. Danny, Emma, and Sam had not only survived their ordeal, but had begun to heal in ways that amazed me every single day. Donnie, now 11, had appointed himself the protector of his younger siblings, a role he took with the seriousness of someone twice his age. He helped me with daily chores around the cabin, chopping kindling, hauling water from the stream, and learning the skills necessary to survive in the wilderness. But more than that, he had become my partner in keeping his brother and sister safe. Emma, 9 years old with a spirit that refused to be broken despite everything she had endured, had turned my simple cabin into something that actually felt like a home. She organized our meager possessions, decorated the walls with drawings made from charcoal and pine needles, and somehow managed to make our simple meals feel like celebrations. Little Sam, now 7, had attached himself to me with the fierce loyalty that only a child can possess. He followed me everywhere, asking endless questions about the forest, the animals, and the world beyond our hidden sanctuary. His laughter, which had been completely absent when I first found them, now filled the cabin regularly. But despite the joy these children had brought into my life, I knew our situation was precarious. The men who had tried to buy them that night hadn't given up their search. I had seen signs, broken branches along rarely used trails, footprints that didn't belong to any of the local wildlife, and most concerning of all, strangers asking questions in town about a man and 3 children. It was on a cold February morning when everything changed. I was outside splitting wood while the children did their lessons. I had been teaching them reading, writing, and arithmetic using old books I had accumulated over the years. When I heard the sound that made my blood freeze. Dogs, tracking dogs. And they were getting closer. I dropped my axe and ran inside the cabin. "Kids," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "we need to go now." Danny looked up from the book he was reading to Emma and Sam. "Are they coming?" "Yes," I said, grabbing our emergency packs that I had prepared for exactly this situation. "Remember what we practiced. Stay together, stay quiet, and follow me." Exactly. The children moved with the efficiency of soldiers, gathering their few possessions and putting on their warmest clothes. In the 3 months they had been with me, we had practiced this evacuation dozens of times, but I had hoped we would never need to use it. As we prepared to leave through the back entrance I had built for emergencies, I made a decision that tore at my heart. I couldn't take them on the run indefinitely. They deserved better than a life of constantly looking over their shoulders, constantly hiding, constantly afraid. They deserved a real home, a real family, a real chance at happiness. "Danny," I said, pulling him aside while Emma helped Sam with his boots, "I need you to listen to me very carefully." "What is it, Jack?" "I'm going to take you somewhere safe. Somewhere those men will never find you. But it means," I struggled with the words, "it means I won't be able to stay with you." Danny's eyes widened with fear. "What do you mean? You're not leaving us, are you?" "I have to," I said, my voice breaking. "As long as you're with me, you'll never be truly safe. Those men are looking for me as much as they're looking for you. But I know someone who can help you. Someone who can give you the kind of life you deserve." "We don't want another life," Emma said, having overheard our conversation. "We want to stay with you." "I know, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down to look her in the eyes. "And I want to stay with you too. But sometimes, when you love someone, you have to do what's best for them, even if it breaks your heart." The sound of the dogs was getting closer. We had to move. I led the children out through the hidden back entrance and into the forest. We moved quickly but carefully, following a route I had memorized that would take us to a place I had hoped never to return to, the town of Cedar Ridge, 50 miles south, where someone from my past lived. Someone who owed me a debt that I was finally ready to collect. We traveled for 2 days, sleeping in caves and abandoned hunting shelters, eating the emergency rations I had packed. The children were exhausted and frightened, but they trusted me completely, following without complaint even when the trail became treacherous. On the second evening, as we made camp in a small cave overlooking Cedar Ridge, I finally told them about Sarah Mitchell. 20 years ago, I said as we huddled around a small fire, when I was 18 and aging out of the foster system, there was a social worker named Sarah Mitchell. She was the only adult who ever really tried to help me. When I told her about the abuse, about the people who had hurt me, she believed me. And when I told her I wanted to disappear, to start over somewhere no one would find me, she helped me do it. Is she still alive? Danny asked. Yes, she retired from social work 5 years ago. But she and her husband run a ranch just outside Cedar Ridge. They take in kids who have nowhere else to go. Kids like you, kids like us, Emma asked. Kids who have been hurt by the system, kids who need a safe place to heal and grow. Sarah has been doing this for decades, and she's never lost a child to the people who were hunting them. But what about you? Sam asked, his small voice filled with tears. Where will you go? The question I had been dreading. The truth was, I didn't know. For 15 years, my cabin had been my entire world. Now I was giving that up, and I had no idea what came next. I'll figure it out, I said. The important thing is that you three will be safe and loved. We're safe and loved with you, Danny said fiercely. I know, I said, and that's why this is so hard. But Danny, you're going to be the man of the family now. You need to take care of Emma and Sam, help them adjust to their new life. Can you do that for me? Danny nodded, tears streaming down his face. I can do it, but I don't want to. I don't want to either, I admitted, but sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do because they're right. The next morning, I made the phone call I had been dreading. Sarah Mitchell answered on the second ring, and her voice was exactly as I remembered, it warm, strong, and filled with compassion. Sarah, this is Jimmy Torres, I said, though I go by Jack Morrison now. There was a long pause. Jimmy, my God, I thought. I hoped you were okay, but I never heard from you after you left. I'm okay, I said, but I need your help. I have 3 children with me, siblings, ages 11, 9, and 7. They're in danger, and they need a safe place to stay. What kind of danger? I told her everything, the trafficking ring, the warehouse, the months of hiding in my cabin, and the men who are still hunting us. Bring them to me, Sarah said without hesitation. We'll keep them safe. Sarah, there's something else. I can't stay with them. As long as I'm around, they'll never be truly safe. Those men are looking for me as much as they're looking for the kids. Jack, she said, using the name I had chosen for myself. You don't have to disappear again. We can protect you too. No, I said firmly. This is the only way. But I need you to promise me something. Promise me you'll love them, like they're your own. Promise me you'll give them the childhood they deserve. I promise, Sarah said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. But Jack, what will you do? What I have to do, I said. That afternoon, I walked with Danny, Emma, and Sam down the mountain toward Cedar Ridge. Each step felt like a knife in my heart, but I knew I was doing the right thing. Sarah's ranch was exactly as I had imagined. It is sprawling property with a large farmhouse, barns and pastures where horses grazed peacefully. It looked like the kind of place where children could run and play and be children again. Sarah met us at the gate, and she looked exactly as I remembered her, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and silver hair, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. Behind her stood her husband Tom, a gentle giant of a man who looked like he could protect anyone from anything. You must be Danny, Emma, and Sam, Sarah said, kneeling down to the children's level. I'm Sarah, and this is my husband Tom. We've been looking forward to meeting you. The children clung to me, reluctant to let go. It's okay, I said softly. These are good people. They're going to take care of you. But what about you? Emma asked, tears streaming down her face. I'll be okay, I lied. And someday, when it's safe, maybe I'll come visit. Promise, Sam asked. I promised to try, I said, which was the most honest answer I could give. I spent one night at the ranch, sleeping in the guest room while the children slept in the room that would become theirs. In the morning, I said my goodbyes. Danny hugged me fiercely. Thank you for saving us, he said. Thank you for saving me, I replied, and I meant it. These 3 children had given me a purpose, a reason to live, that I hadn't had in years. Emma gave me a drawing. She had made a picture of our cabin with all 4 of us standing in front of it, smiling. So you don't forget us, she said. I could never forget you, I promised. Little Sam was the hardest goodbye. He wrapped his arms around my neck and wouldn't let go. I love you, Jack, he whispered. I love you too, buddy, I said, my voice breaking. All of you, more than you'll ever know. I left the ranch that morning and drove north, back toward the mountains that had been my home for so long. But I didn't go back to my cabin. Instead, I went to the sheriff's office in Timber Falls. Sheriff Martinez was a good man, someone I had occasionally interacted with during my rare trips to town. I told him everything about the trafficking ring, about the warehouse, about the men who were still out there hurting children. Jack, he said after I finished my story, this is bigger than just our county. We need to involve the FBI. I know, I said, and I'm willing to testify, to do whatever it takes to shut these people down. But I need you to promise me something. What's that those 3 children I saved, they're safe now, with good people. But if word gets out about where they are, if their location becomes public record, I understand, Sheriff Martinez said. Their location stays sealed. They get new identities if necessary. Whatever it takes to keep them safe. The investigation that followed lasted 6 months. I testified before grand juries, worked with FBI agents, and helped them track down every member of the trafficking ring. It was dangerous work. There were attempts on my life, threats against anyone who helped me, but it was worth it. In the end, we shut down a network that had been operating for over a decade, trafficking hundreds of children across multiple states. 23 people were arrested and convicted, including the man in the expensive suit who had been auctioning Danny, Emma, and Sam that night. But the victory came at a cost. My cabin was burned down during one of the attempts to silence me. My truck was destroyed. Everything I had built over 15 years was gone. When it was all over, when the last conviction was secured and the last appeal was denied, I found myself standing in the ruins of my old life, wondering what came next. That's when Sarah called. "Jack," she said, "I have something to tell you. The children, they're doing wonderfully. Danny is at the top of his class. Emma has discovered a talent for art, and Sam, well, Sam talks about you every day." "That's good," I said, though hearing about them made my heart ache with longing. "But there's something else. Tom and I have been talking, and we have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" "We're getting older, Jack. This ranch is a lot of work, and we could use help. More than that, we could use someone who understands what these kids have been through, someone who can help them heal." "Sarah, I can't. Those men are in prison, but they have associates, people who might still be looking for revenge. The FBI says the threat is over, the network is dismantled, and Jack, these children need you. They're safe, they're loved, but they're not complete. They ask about you every day." I closed my eyes, trying to imagine a life where I could be with Danny, Emma, and Sam again, where I could watch them grow up, where I could be part of a real family. "Think about it," Sarah said. "You gave up everything to save them. Maybe it's time to let them save you too." 2 weeks later, I drove up the long driveway to Sarah's ranch, my few remaining possessions in the back of a borrowed truck. I had no idea what I was walking into, no idea if this would work, no idea if I could really be part of a family after so many years alone. But as I parked the truck and stepped out, I heard a sound that made all my doubts disappear. "Jack," Sam's voice carried across the yard as he ran toward me, his face lit up with pure joy. "Jack, you came back." Behind him came Emma and Danny, running just as fast, their faces showing the same incredible happiness. And behind them came Sarah and Tom, smiling like proud grandparents. As those 3 children crashed into me, wrapping their arms around me in a group hug that nearly knocked me over, I realized something profound. I hadn't just saved them that night in the warehouse. They had saved me too. "Are you staying this time?" Emma asked, looking up at me with hope in her eyes. "I'm staying," I said, and for the first time in my life, I knew what it felt like to truly belong somewhere. "Forever?" Sam asked. "Forever," I promised. Today, 5 years later, Danny is 16 and talking about college. Emma is 14 and has had her artwork displayed in galleries. Sam is 12 and has decided he wants to be a forest ranger, like his dad Jack. Sarah and Tom officially adopted all 3 children 2 years ago, and they asked me to be their legal guardian if anything ever happens to them. I said yes, because these kids aren't just the children I saved, they're my family. We still live on the ranch, and I help run the operation that has saved dozens of other children over the years. Every child who comes to us gets the same thing. Danny, Emma, and Sam got unconditional love, safety, and the chance to be children again. Sometimes, I think about my old cabin, about the solitary life I lived for so many years. I don't miss it. That man who lived alone in the mountains, who thought he was beyond redemption, who believed he would never be part of a family, he's gone. In his place is someone I never thought I could be. A father, a protector, a man who learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is giving up everything you have to save someone else. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they save you right back. A powerful story about how love and sacrifice can triumph over the darkest evil, and how the greatest families are often formed in the most unexpected ways. Like if you believe in the power of unconditional love to heal even the deepest wounds, subscribe for more inspiring stories about courage and redemption, and share to remind others that sometimes the greatest heroes are ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things. Legal notice: this story is completely fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. The characters, events, and situations described are products of imagination and do not represent real facts. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental.